What if I told you that everything you learned in history class was a lie? What if the Philippines wasn't just a group of islands conquered by Spain, but was actually the seat of a massive ancient empire called Maharlika, an empire that owned everything from Borneo to Hawaii? And what if I told you that this lost kingdom left behind a secret worth more than all the gold in the world combined? Stick around because we're about to open the vault. We've all seen the posts, the Tallano Gold, the secret accounts, the idea that the Philippines is actually the biblical land of Ophir. It's an intoxicating story, right? The idea that we aren't a developing nation struggling to get by, but a sleeping giant sitting on a throne of solid gold. It's the ultimate underdog story. But here's the thing about stories. Sometimes the most comforting ones are the most dangerous. Sometimes the truth is actually stranger and more spectacular than the fiction we invented to replace it. So grab a snack and settle in because today we are going on a journey. We are going to dig through ancient Sanskrit texts, audit the archives of the U.S. Army, and do the math on 600,000 tons of gold. We are going to uncover the real lost kingdoms. You might want to watch until the end because what we find in the mud of Butuan is worth a lot more than any fairy tale. Okay, let's start with the story circulating on your news feed. It goes like this. Long before Magellan set foot on Hominhan, the Philippines was a unified monarchy, the Kingdom of Maharlika. And this kingdom wasn't just local, it was a superpower. The myth claims this empire spanned the entire archipelago, Borneo, Guam, and even Hawaii. It paints a picture of a civilization that was light years ahead of what history books tell us. According to this narrative, this massive estate was ruled by a single royal family, the Tallano-Tagean clan. And these guys weren't just rich, they were wealthier than God rich. The story claims the Tallano family accumulated massive amounts of gold through ancient trade, so much gold that they ran out of places to put it. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of metric tons. It suggests that while Europe was still figuring out hygiene, this dynasty was sitting on a mountain of bullion. Now the timeline is detailed, which is what hooks people. The claim is that in 1764, the British governor Dawson Drake issued a title called OCT 014 to Prince Lacan Acuna Tallano-Tagean, recognizing him as the owner of the Hacienda Filipina, basically the whole country. It's a compelling image, a British governor handing over the keys to the kingdom to a native prince. But keep that date in mind, 1764. It's going to be important later. It gets crazier. The myth says that when the U.S. took over in 1898, a Tallano heir paid $20 million in gold coins to buy back the country. The story then connects this to Ferdinand Marcos, claiming he was the family's lawyer and received thousands of tons of gold as commission. This theory transforms the narrative of ill-gotten wealth into one of secret heroism, a Robin Hood story, but with way more gold bars. It gives you this hit of dopamine, right? The feeling that we were cheated out of paradise. But before we destroy the myth, I want to ask you a serious question. When you see these posts, what did you think Maharlika meant? Did you think it meant royalty, warrior, or something else? Pause the video right now, go down to the comments, and type your definition. Be honest. I want to see how many of us were taught the propaganda version. Go ahead, I'll wait. Alright, let's look at the forensic linguistics. This is the smoking gun. The word Maharlika isn't originally Tagalog. It comes from the Sanskrit Mahardika, meaning man of wealth or ability. By the time it reached the Philippines in the 1500s, it didn't mean king. We have primary sources from the 1500s like the writings of Fray Juan de Plasencia that describe exactly who they were, and they weren't at the top of the pyramid. Plasencia described the Maharlika as the feudal warrior class, essentially the samurai or knights. They were free from agricultural tax, but they paid in blood. They had to arm themselves and fight for the Datu. Here's the kicker. The Maharlika were technically less free than the commoners. If they wanted to switch allegiances, they had to pay a massive fine in gold. They were prestigious, sure, but they were servants. The real rulers were the Magino. We don't just have to read about them, we can see them. The 1590s Boxer Codex contains vivid illustrations of Filipinos at the time of contact. If there was a unified Maharlika empire, you'd expect uniforms, right? Instead, we see a dazzling mosaic. You have the Tagalog Magino dripping in gold chains, 10 to 12 around their necks, and the Visayan Pintados covered in tattoos that looked like armor. The Pintados are especially cool. Tattoos weren't fashion, they were a resume, a public record of your kills in battle. A warrior without tattoos was called mapurao, or natural-colored, basically a coward. This diversity proves there was no monolithic Maharlika kingdom. There were many kingdoms. To lump them all under one fake name is actually insulting to the unique heritage of the Visayans, Kampampagans, and Mindanaoans. So where did the royal kingdom branding come from? All roads lead to Ferdinand Marcos. During WWI2, he claimed to lead a guerrilla unit called Angmaga Maharlika. He asked the U.S. Army for back pay for 8,000 men. The U.S. Army investigated, and their conclusion was brutal. They called the unit a fictitious creation and the claims fraudulent. The unit was a ghost army. But Marcos was a master of branding. He took a word that meant vassal, attached it to a fake guerrilla unit, and elevated it to mean royalty to make his regime seem like the return of a glorious past. He named highways, halls, and even wanted to rename the country Maharlika. The Kingdom of Maharlika wasn't ancient history, it was 1970s marketing. Now the money, the 617,500 tons of gold. Let's do the math. According to the World Gold Council, the total gold mined in all of human history is only about 216,000 tons. That includes Fort Knox, ancient Egypt, and your jewelry. The Tallano myth claims they have 3 times more gold than exists on the entire planet. If that were true, gold would be as cheap as aluminum. It's geologically impossible. But here is the tragedy. By obsessing over fake gold, we ignore the real gold right under our noses. If you want a lost kingdom, look at Butuan. In the 10th century, it was a thriving rajanate on the maritime Silk Road. Look at the Golden Tara, a 4-pound statue of pure 21-karat gold found in a riverbank. Our ancestors weren't hiding gold in bunkers, they were crafting it into masterpieces. And look at the Balangay. These weren't canoes. The excavations in Butuan revealed a mother boat 25 meters long. We were the Vikings of Southeast Asia, a phallosocracy that ruled the waves. We didn't need a land bridge, we had the technology to sail the Pacific. The Chinese Song dynasty records mention trade missions from Butuan arriving at the imperial court. That is recognition from the superpower of the era. We also have heroes like Tariq Suleiman. In 1571, this Kapampangan youth refused to bow to the Spanish. He led a fleet of 40 warships into the Battle of Bangkusay. He fought and died defending his freedom. That is real heroism. We don't need a fake Prince Tallano when we have the real Rajas of Butuan. We don't need ghost gold when we have the Golden Tara. So why does the lie persist? It's colonial mentality. We were taught our ancestors were savages, creating a vacuum in our identity. The Maharlika myth fills that vacuum with a fantasy of supremacy. It promises that our wealth is owed to us, not something we have to build. But relying on these myths is disrespectful. It ignores the fact that we were great because of our skill, not because of a magical inheritance. The real gold of the Philippines isn't in a mythical vault, it's in our DNA. It's in the artistry of the weavers, the navigation of the Bajau, and the bravery of our heroes. So tell your friends, the gold isn't in Switzerland, it's in the museum in Butuan. The empire wasn't a fiction called Maharlika, it was the reality of the Balangare. We don't need to lie to be proud. The truth is rich enough. If you want to know more about the real history, visit the National Museum. And if you have a friend who shares those Tallano posts, send them this video, gently. Would you rather have a fake empire or a real maritime history? Let me know in the comments. Like, subscribe, and stay critical. See you in the next one.